Hello, welcome back to my channel, The Fantastic Autistic. Today I'm going to be talking about autism and video games, focusing in on the character of Symmetra from Overwatch. I'm reading this from a script, so if you prefer to read the words yourself, you can download the script from a Google Drive link, which is included in the description below. Okay, here we go. In the world of video gaming, autism rarely makes an appearance. Wikipedia currently lists 11 identifiable autistic characters in video games, most of whom are secondary characters or bit parts, and all of whom exist within narratives that have very little to do with autism itself. For a medium which relies so heavily on the interaction of visual and sensory elements to achieve success in various rigidly structured tasks, it is quite curious that in terms of narrative, most video games choose to flatly ignore the existence of autism. The big exception to this is probably Minecraft. This is a game which has proved immensely popular with autistic gamers, and now has its very own dedicated autism-specific server in the shape of Autcraft. Here, a virtual world exists which pretty much exclusively consists of autistic people and is shaped by its own set of community rules and understandings. It has become a place of great value to many autistic gamers, a therapeutic place where the emphasis is on inclusion of autism rather than its eradication. But representation is still essential. Video games can't continue to pretend that autism only exists in reality and has no place in virtuality. So that's why the character of Symmetra is so important. She is one of the 29 playable characters or heroes from the wildly popular and truly excellent Overwatch, a fast-paced multiplayer shooter made by Blizzard Entertainments. Back in 2016, shortly before the game's release, a tie-in Overwatch comic hinted towards Symmetra as being on the spectrum. And here we can see a panel from that webcomic where she says, Sanjay has always said I was different, everyone has, asking where I fit on the spectrum whilst walking across a spectrum of light. The game's chief designer, Jeff Kaplan, later confirmed her autism in a letter exchange with an autistic fan. Here is that letter. Brilliantly, in that letter, Kaplan said that Symmetra is, quote, one of our most beloved heroes, and we think she does a great job of representing just how awesome someone with autism can be. All this is wonderful, and only adds to the sheer brilliance of Overwatch as both a game and a cultural icon. But my question is, how, if at all, does Symmetra's autism actually translate into the gameplay itself? And what fantastical elements might we see in Symmetra's design that speak to her identity as an autistic person? Here is the information screen on Symmetra from the game. Here you can change her outfit, learn about her moves, or listen to some of her voice lines. There is no direct indication of Symmetra's autism here, except for some vague references to structure, order and reality in some of those voice lines, and you can see them here listed on the left. So some of them say, for example, perfect harmony, one says how unsightly, another one says put you in your place, and then the one second up from the bottom, I think, which is the most interesting for me, where she says welcome to my reality. This is as close as we get to actual autism within the game. The A word itself is notably absent. This is not unusual. Time and time again in depictions of autism, the word autism is steadfastly avoided. Take The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon as an example. This is one of the most famous books about autism. However, the condition itself is only named on a quote in the inner sleeve from Oliver Sacks, and it's never actually mentioned in the text itself. Now, Overwatch is not about autism, so perhaps it would complicate things if it were mentioned. Instead, we have to look at Symmetra as a character and see what we might infer about autistic representation. But first, a quick overview of Overwatch itself. It is a multiplayer game where players are divided into two teams and fight for control of objects and targets in various arenas. It is fast and furious and frantic, and at any point in the game, players can change the characters that they play as to try and change the tactical approach to the match. Symmetra is a damage hero. Her primary focus is to attack. Her weaponry consists of a photon projector, as you can see here, which is a sort of laser beam gun which drains life energy and also shoots these big balls of energy to try and kill the other characters. She also has these sentry turrets which act as traps, and she throws them and they stick on walls and doorways, and then she can run past them and then other characters run past and they get zapped by them. And she also has a teleportation pad that she can set down, which enables her to transport herself and her teammates across the map instantaneously. And then finally she can create this huge photon barrier that acts as a kind of gigantic shield and cuts through the entire map. Compared to other characters, Symmetra is a highly tactical choice who takes quite a bit of practice to master. Her photon projector is only useful if you are close to an enemy, while the turrets and teleports have to be placed in clever positions to try and help the team gain a tactical advantage. Nevertheless, she is a powerful and tricksy hero who can really change the course of a match if used well. But what might we be able to see of Symmetra's autism in these moves? Well, perhaps it's not too much of a stretch to say that Symmetra prefers to stay out of the chaos of the main fight and instead puts her skills towards creating a new sort of order in the space around the outside of the chaos. By laying down turrets, teleporters and giant shields, she effectively manipulates the world to better suit her own needs. Perhaps the game designers saw this habit of Symmetra, of creating her own world to counteract the violence of everyone else's world, and related that to the commonly held idea that autistic individuals react in similar ways to the neurotypical world. Following that thought, we might be able to say that Symmetra's heroic status comes from her self-assurance as an autistic woman who has turned her autistic mind to productive use, rather than succumbing to the oppressions and rejections of a world not yet suited for autism. Going back to her comic, there is a sense of this. The comic details her backstory, and in her backstory, Symmetra works as an architect for a large corporation who triggered the destruction of a slum in order to win a contract. Symmetra has played a part in all this. She takes part in some industrial espionage. By the end, she's doubtful about whether she is helping to create a better world or not. She is an autistic person caught up in the schemes cooked up by non-autistic superiors where she feels like she does not belong. Symmetra makes use of futuristic technology called hard light in order to create structures. This is what her turrets, teleports and shields are made of. In the details of her character, it states that Symmetra uses traditional dance moves and gestures from her homeland in the creation of these structures rather than using the regular methods. It's not too much of a stretch, therefore, to suggest that this is Symmetra making use of her autistic stims, sweeps of her arms and hands and fingers to paint shapes and patterns out of hard light. Here, autistic habit, which is so often quashed by the non-autistic, is actually shown to be a superior and quite beautiful method of constructive creation. There hasn't yet been another comic featuring Symmetra, so her story currently remains unfinished. Perhaps the writers are unsure where to take her next and whether to explore more facets of her autism or to continue to avoid that A word. Perhaps we could see Symmetra rebelling against the corporation, now that she realizes that they represent an order that creates chaos, and while doing so, she may learn a little more about that autistic element of her identity. No doubt, there are other autistic minds out there for her to connect to, perhaps. Perhaps Blizzard could look across their roster of heroes and discover another. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any thoughts or comments, please just leave them in the comment section below. Thank you.